Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're doing well. I'm coming on today to talk about 3 dreams I've had in quick succession. They are warning dreams, and the warning is urgent, so I do hope you will bear with me and stay with me through this video. In the first dream, I was in a house in America with my American relatives. These are not my American relatives, this was just a picture I found of a family. And I do have American relatives. My husband is American, and these people were showing me around their house. They were quite excited about their house, and they were describing the plans they had. And I was a bit puzzled because it seemed actually really flimsy, like it was made of cardboard or bits of plywood that had kind of been put together. So I was a bit confused, but they were very enthusiastic and they had plans for this place. And the next thing, we were all sitting together in this room, and there were 4 settees. This was the nearest thing I could find to it. So this was actually a settee here, one here, or sofas if you call them that, or couches, and there was another one here. Now I was sitting here on my own. There was some of the relatives here, and some of the relatives here, and they were discussing quite animatedly with each other, and they were talking about voting, about elections, American elections. And then over here on this settee, by himself, was actually Barack Obama. And so they were all talking together very animatedly about their opinions and about voting. I was here, and he was here, and I was feeling extremely uncomfortable. So I'm just telling you what happened in the dream. I'm not making any political statement or anything. I'm also not saying that Obama is the Antichrist, although I know that there are lots of people out there who think he is. I certainly think he's a type. But anyway, I was sitting here on my own, he was sitting there on his own, and they were all talking very animatedly. And I felt really uncomfortable and didn't quite know what to say or do. So it was almost like I was looking at him and saying, well, I guess you and I better talk amongst ourselves, And he was sitting there and he was looking very smug and self-satisfied. I had the impression that he was kind of pulling the strings behind the scenes here. He was thinking, well, they might be planning and discussing these elections, but actually I'm pulling the strings behind the scenes here. And that was the dream. So I didn't quite know what to make of it the next day when I woke up. I actually thought it might have been linked to the elections, the European elections that we were having in Britain, where I live, because I hadn't realised that the elections were on that day and I ought to go down and vote. I thought maybe it's about that. But then the next day I was looking on YouTube, and I saw this YouTube video was put up. Unfortunately, it's cut off at the bottom here, but it says the name of the video was "The Sign Changes Everything. Watch for June the 6th confirmation event." And this was a Steve Fletcher video. I didn't watch the whole video, so I can't vouch for the content, but I saw this and I read what it said here. Politics. As 23 candidates struggle for attention, one name stands out. And of course we have a picture of Barack Obama here. And I was thinking, oh, really? Are there elections coming up? Is he again putting himself forward as a candidate? So I didn't know what it meant, but I thought, wow, this is clearly somehow linked to the dream I had last night, because I've never had a dream about Barack Obama before. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So, as I say, I'm not making a political statement or saying that Obama is the Antichrist. I do apologise, I'm fighting a cold again. I'm just sharing what I believe God is showing me through this dream. So the interpretation for this was that in the dream, the people were Americans, so it had to do with America, but they were also supposed to be family. So I felt that this was not set apart for America only, but that the influence and the impact of these events would spread beyond the American shores alone, because there was a link between myself and them. I'm British, they're American. So they were showing me their house and their plans. So it showed that they were unsuspecting and that they felt they had a substantial future. I also noticed that the house was very flimsy and was puzzled by their plans or their excitement, because you couldn't really make much of this house. It was too flimsy. So they were unaware of their situation and how fragile it is. This house would definitely not stand up in a storm. And it reminded me of Matthew 7:24 to 27, where Jesus or Yeshua speaks of not being a fool and building a house on the sand, but being a wise man and building a house on the rock. He says, everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand, and the rain descended and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. So I was very much reminded of that, and the Lord is saying we really need to listen to the things that he is saying to us. So they were heatedly discussing voting, and again this suggests that they thought that voting was worthwhile, and they had some influence over their future and over their own governance. And meanwhile, Barack Obama was sitting there looking at them in a very self-satisfied way. So I believe that God is showing that, as we already know, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of. It is not about flesh and blood, but it's about principalities, powers, rulers of darkness in this age, the spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places, as it says in Ephesians 6. And the Antichrist is waiting to step onto the scene, and we need to be aware and to wake up to this fact, not building our house on the sand of worldly affairs and of the very limited worldly influence that we have in the face of a satanic puppet master, and by that I mean Satan himself, but instead to build on the rock of Yeshua, Jesus, Yeshua HaMashiach himself. So I felt this was confirmed when the next day I saw that actually Steve had put up another video. You can see here, this was the first one. It said, the sign that changes everything. I know it says 3 days ago, but there was actually a day's gap between them, or else it was some hours, some 12 hours or something between them. And the second one was waiting for Obama, waiting for midnight. And I did actually dig into this article. I'll talk more about this waiting idea actually later, because I saw this after I'd had another dream, or was reminded of it. But I dug into the article, I looked into the article here that he was talking about, and the whole article was about him, Barack Obama, waiting, biding his time, playing golf, writing a book, keeping everyone guessing about who he was going to endorse, i.e. about whom he was going to exert his political power and influence behind the scenes to support and to control what's going on, as it were, in front of house politically. So if you go to the actual article, I think it's no coincidence that it states, seemingly out of nowhere, that Barack Obama is literally more popular than Jesus among the Democrats. I looked at this as a link here, and I hit the link, and there was no evidence or data to back that up. Actually, this link was most unhelpful. There was lots of data, but nothing about any polls about popularity of Jesus versus Obama or otherwise. So I don't know where this came from, but I think it's highly significant that it says here that out of nowhere that he's more popular than Jesus, because this emphasizes the extent of Satan's dominion as God of this world, and again illustrates the battle not being against flesh and blood, but against rulers of darkness in the heavenly places. The Bible clearly teaches us that Satan is the god of this world, that Adam handed over the title deeds to the earth when he sinned. So the next dream I had was very, very clear. I was in the house of a woman. She was a Christian, but she was also a Messianic or Hebrew roots Christian. So there was a sort of crossover here. She was part of the Hebrew roots, the Messianic movement. And in her house, we were discussing bed linen. Okay, and the house was an amazing design, and it had, there's only just one here, but it had rows and rows of like sleeping pods in these transparent, with transparent walls. You could see inside, and you could see the beds inside, And it all crossed over into sort of outdoor living. So outdoors kind of came in and indoors kind of went out. It was all very beautiful like this. I mean, it's lovely. But this is what it was. This is what her house was like. It was full of all these transparent sleeping pods. And she was married, but it was very distressing because in her dream, her husband was being really deceitful. He was having an affair, but he was telling her at the same time that he loved her. So he was being completely duplicitous. And he presented himself as a messianic leader. But it was not clear, it was clearly not, I beg your pardon, he was clearly not all that he was presenting himself to be, because he was lying, he was being deceitful. And in the house, there was this, on the wall, there was this strange thing. It was like a TV, but like a clock. And so there he is, sort of presenting himself as a messianic leader. So there was this clock, and it was like there was an announcement being made through it, as it were, on a television. And it was like a news announcement or an advertisement. And it was being spoken out, and I could hear this voice. I was standing on my own looking at this, and I could hear this voice saying words to this effect: "At last we are getting rid of God. It's about time. Finally, we're getting what we wanted. It's high time." And then this is what it looked like. I saw these sands in the bottom, like it was an egg timer, a sand timer, with, in capital letters, very clearly and boldly, Antichrist written across. And then I could see the minute hand here, or the only hand on the clock that was visible, and it went very quickly straight down to 6, like that. It wasn't 1 second, 2 seconds, it wasn't. It went straight down and pointed to the 6 and pointed to the Antichrist. In the bottom here, the sands of time. So very clearly saying Antichrist, and I knew it was the time of or for the Antichrist. And I was watching this on my own. I had to actually go and get this woman. I had to call her and say, "Come, look at this." And if I hadn't, she wouldn't have been aware. And I also knew that this wasn't the first time that I'd heard this announcement. It was the second time. And in the Bible, whenever Jesus or Yeshua says anything twice, it's like verily, verily. It means it's absolutely emphatic, and there's no doubt and there's no changing it. This is the truth. It's time. So I asked the Lord for an interpretation, because I was unclear as to who this was being directed at, and I didn't know how to interpret or to unpick the sort of Judeo-Messianic mix of the characters. And I knew the woman was a Christian lady who was not Jewish, and yet she had espoused much of the Hebrew roots teaching. And in this dream, her husband was teaching very deep roots type of Judeo-Christian teaching, also to the point actually of being on the verge of Judaizing. So it was sort of a blurred spectrum, and I asked the Lord, and he indicated to me that this was not actually a criticism of Hebrew roots. We're not to think that. The woman in the dream was very dedicated to the Lord. Instead, the imagery was indicative of the fact that this is a message going out to the full spectrum of believers in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So this is going out to Jewish people, as well as to Christian people, as well as everybody in the spectrum in between. It's a stern reminder to all of us that we need to beware in these times of what Yeshua said in Matthew 24. So it's to everybody who is awaiting or expecting, or should be expecting, the advent of or the return of the Messiah. And this is what he said: "For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect." So to explain or to unpick who I'm talking about here, for example, we know that the Jews are expecting the Messiah to come at any moment, and some even say he's late. I'll put a link up here, but there's, for example, here you can read about Jewish rabbis have been saying Messiah is coming this year, we need to prepare. And there's this is what I've taken from this particular website, and it goes into it in great depth. And this isn't the only place, there are videos up about this and so on. So the Jews are expecting a Messiah. And as for Christians or believers in Jesus, believers in Yeshua, Messianic people, the whole spectrum, many are, and actually all should be, observing the signs of the times, which include, just for example, the imminent rebuilding of the third temple. The Antichrist, when he comes for the 7 years, the time of Jacob's trouble, that was prophesied and promised in Daniel 9, he can't set himself up and call himself God halfway through the 7-year period in the temple if the temple hasn't been built yet. And it's ready to be built. Everything is ready. So all the players are lining up on the world stage for the Ezekiel 38 war. They're all in Syria, the Russians, Iran, the Sudanese, and so forth. Damascus is on the brink of destruction, as per Isaiah 17. All the end times events as described by Yeshua in Matthew 24 of famines, pestilences, earthquakes, wars and rumours and wars, and the massive increase in lawlessness which we're seeing, the similarity of the world today to the days of Lot and Noah. All of these things are there as a witness to the time that we're in. A very important event on God's clock was, of course, the restoration of Israel in May of 1948, which is now, we are now at the end of its 70th year. We are the fig tree generation. All of these events and signs coming together should be ringing deafening alarm bells for Christians everywhere. The two witnesses of God's word and the ever-increasing fulfillment of these prophecies should be enough alone, and yet we also have the third witness of the many watchmen and watchwomen who have been shouting of our place in God's timetable on YouTube, some of us for years. Some believers are awake, but still note that in the dream we were discussing bed linen and there were all the sleeping pods. So it's a clear indication to the fact that whereas all of the church or all the body of Christ should be awake at this time, observing the signs of the times and anticipating for and preparing for and loving the Lord's reappearance, so many are not. Many are indifferent. Some are adopting the ostrich position, not sure what to do with all of this information and these ideas. Some are following another Jesus or listening to another gospel, a self-centered, ear-tickling gospel. Many are too busy with their own lives and their own plans. I mean, look at this. Focus on yourself instead of others, then you will succeed. I mean, what kind of a credo is that? So the world, it speaks so much of where we are in the world today. The world is full of sin, selfishness, rebellion, lukewarm people. I'm not saying everybody, there's always a remnant, praise the Lord, and I give thanks for my brothers and sisters. But the Lord has given me this job to be a cleaning lady and prepare the bride of Christ for his imminent return. And when he began telling me this over a year ago, he showed me that the bride, according to Revelation 19 verse 7, should have made herself ready, and she has not. So Jesus warns of all of this in the parable of the 10 virgins, which you can read in Matthew 25 verses 1 to 13. We should all have been ready, but 5 fell asleep and they did not have enough oil. We did not have the oil of the Holy Spirit. So it's absolutely tragic that much of the church is asleep in a burning house. Well, in this dream, as I say, the house was all glass and transparent and seemed to blur into the outside world like the picture. It was very beautiful and very appealing and all made up of sleeping pods. And we were discussing the bed linen. So this was clearly the focus and priority. This speaks to the fact that, number one, nothing is hidden from God's eyes. He sees right into the heart of the church, right into the life and the heart of every believer. The church has blurred and blended itself with the outside world instead of keeping holy and set apart, or much of it has. Please, we need to be checking our hearts. Where are we in this? Is our preoccupation with the earthly beauty and comfort? Are we asleep and preoccupied with the things that make sleep more comfortable and appealing? Are we preoccupied with bed linen? The church, believers, Christians of all varieties, and Jewish believers must wake up and see the signs of the times. We must repent and seek the Lord while he may be found. Also, I was puzzled about the imagery pertaining to the unfaithful husband. Who or what was he, or what was he represented? And I'd like to point out at this point, it's not directed to a particular real life individual or a branch, any particular branch of Judeo-Christian faith, so please don't speculate about this. This is just the imagery that the Lord gave me in my dream to help me to interpret his message. And that when I asked him about it, the Lord was very clear, and he indicated that this dream was about the identity of the Messiah or the false Messiah. The man in this dream had set himself up as a messianic leader. So think about this in the context of the Antichrist. He called himself a rabbi, but he was not one. He wasn't of Jewish heritage, and he wasn't trained as a rabbi, yet he set himself up as a messianic leader. He was deceitful, duplicitous. He was a liar. He told his wife he loved her, and yet at the same time he was having an affair with another woman. So going back to Matthew 24, while preparing this, I noticed something actually. I've read this passage obviously very many times, but if you look, you'll see that it does talk about the signs of the times. That's here in green, the wars, the rumours of wars, the pestilences, the earthquakes, the lawlessness, the love of many growing cold, the lukewarm church, and so forth. But there's also repeatedly, he draws our attention to the fact, to the warnings that we need to be aware of all the false Christs, and particularly, one in particular, the Antichrist, who will rise up at this time. And so we need to be awake to the warnings of Matthew 24. Let no man deceive you. The Antichrist is at the very door. Do not listen to his lies, whoever you are and wherever you are on the Judeo-Christian spectrum, because it says that he could deceive, if possible, even the elect. So the deception is going to be very, very powerful. So please wake up and listen to these warnings, and do not listen to his lies. Wake up to the signs of the times. Please understand where we are in God's chronology. It was so powerful in this dream that as soon as the dream was finished, I woke up. The Lord woke me up immediately after this, and I went into intercession. I couldn't go back to sleep. I was on my face before the Lord for quite some time in prayer. So church, we need to get on our knees, because there he is. There's the wolf in sheep's clothing, this false Christ, this Antichrist that is about to arise. Don't be asleep. Please wake up. Please listen and wake up. And we need to be on our knees and interceding and praying. We need to intercede for ourselves, for our families, for the church worldwide, and for the lost. That's where we should be, not sleeping at this time. And when I woke up, I looked at my husband's clock across the bed, and I saw it said 5:07. And I got up to pray, and I picked up my phone, which is my clock. And I don't know if my eyes were a bit blurry, but first I saw 5:06, and then straight away also at the same time, I saw 5:08. So I have talked before about my husband's clock in a previous video, when the Lord woke me up before at 5 o'clock in the morning. And five is the number of grace. There we are. 5 is the number of grace. And we are, or have been, in the time of grace. It's been the time of the Gentiles, the 2,000 years since Yeshua was crucified. It's been a time of grace. But it was 5:07. It shows us that's the number of completion and perfection. And it shows that on God's clock, on my husband's clock, it's the time of completion. The age of grace has come to an end. Then I looked at my clock, representing, I suppose, people of faith, and I saw 5:06, and 6 is the number of man. And it's also, of course, the number of the Antichrist. As you'll know, the number of 666 relates to the Antichrist. So what am I going to do? Am I going to choose man instead of God's grace? Or Am I going to choose 508, which I also saw at the same time, which is the number of Yeshua? And it's the number of new beginnings. Am I going to choose a new beginning with him, with Yeshua? Or am I going to choose, now at this time of the end of God's grace, am I going to choose man? And I looked up these numbers in and of themselves. I looked up 507, and it is the Greek word ano, and it means up above, up to the top, up to the brim, things above, heaven, the heavenly region. So this speaks of, am I going to choose? God is calling us into the skies, up above. He's calling us upward, to be with him in the heavenlies. This is symbolic as well of the imminent rapture. Or am I going to choose 506? If you look at this, the meaning is that. I'm not going to try and pronounce it. And if you look at what it means, it says not under God's arrangement, not properly, not submissive, disobedient, unruly, unwilling to come under Christ's lordship, refusing to fall in line with, fit in with God's plan, uncooperative, with a defiant attitude towards duly appointed authority, uncontrollable, refractory, unsubjective, anti-authoritarian, rebellious. Well, of course, he is the man of lawlessness, the Antichrist. He's the man of lawlessness. He's the man of sin, the man of rebellion. Are you going to choose 506, the man of sin and unruliness? Or are you going to choose to be 508 in the upper room, which is what that means, in the upper room? And I did a little search on the upper room, and according to tradition, this is where the apostles stayed when they were in Jerusalem. It's where the Last Supper took place. It's where Yeshua washed his disciples' feet, his ministry of loving service. It's the concept of a loving friendship. It's where the concept of a loving friendship with Yeshua was introduced. It's also, by tradition, the same room where Jesus appeared before and after the resurrection. It's where the risen one made himself visible. It's also where by tradition, where they waited for Pentecost and were filled with the Holy Spirit. It's where they gathered when they were waiting for the Lord. So are we going to choose the man of sin, the man of rebellion, or are we going to choose the upper room and the upward things with God? And there's the website. I will put up a link if you want to read about the upper room. Well, I went back to sleep eventually after quite some time of prayer and intercession, and I had a very, very vivid further dream about making a video. I had to make a video. I had to take other videos, other films that had already been made. I had to put them together and edit them and make my own voiceovers. And it had to be, and I wanted it to be, glorifying to God, and it had to warn about the Antichrist stepping up. So it was very, very plain. No question, I had to make this video. I also felt I had a song, even a prophetic song in my heart that I needed to put in the film. And the film that I had to find, the original film, I had to find and edit and dub and incorporate into my own, was a film called Who Are You Waiting For? And in the dream, I searched for this film in the archives, and I could find information about it, but I couldn't find the film itself. And I have to say, by the way, I couldn't find a real film called Who Are You Waiting For? But it clearly has prophetic significance. So I found information about this film, though I couldn't find the actual footage itself. For some reason, Tom Cruise was in it. So in my dream, I worked very hard to put my video together, and my prophetic video, which was to be glorifying to the Lord and to warn of the Antichrist stepping up. And I knew it was urgent, and I had to stay late to finish it as time was running out. And when I woke up, I looked, I thought, well, goodness me, what's Tom Cruise got to do with it? So I actually Googled, of all things, Bible Tom Cruise, not thinking I was going to come up with anything. And amazingly, I found this. I found that there's a Bible museum which has recycled old celebrity waxworks and is including Tom Cruise as Jesus. Well, I can't think really of a more graphic picture of, if you like, a wolf in sheep's clothing, a completely inappropriate person to be representing Yeshua, he's not a Christian, he's not a godly man. He is or has been associated for a long time with a false cult, the cult of Scientology, and there he is dressed up as the Messiah. So I thought that was incredibly graphic and a clear representation. And remember that when I woke up, the film, I had to call the film Waiting, Who Are You Waiting For? And unfortunately it doesn't show very well on here, I'm sorry. But the second Steve Fletcher video that I saw, Waiting for Obama, it says at the bottom, Waiting for Obama, Waiting for Midnight. And so that reminded me, yes, look, there it is again, this who are you waiting for? Are you waiting for Obama? Are you waiting for someone else? So I have to ask you today, who are you waiting for? Are you waiting? Are you Jewish? Are you waiting for the Messiah? Please beware. Yeshua himself warned in John 5:43, he says, I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes, or when he comes in his own name, him you will receive. There is a false Messiah about to take his place on the world stage, and many will receive him as Messiah, as Mashiach. And he will be the false Messiah. I highly recommend this video. It's called The Case for Christ. In brief, it's a true story of a man in the 70s and 80s. He was an atheist, a very convinced atheist, as was his wife. And his wife became a believer in Yeshua as the Messiah. And he was so angry about this that he used all of his journalistic skills to, it was like an incident room that he set up, just as the police do, a forensic incident room. He went through a forensic analysis of all the evidence that there is out there supporting the fact that Yeshua was the Messiah, is the Messiah. He spoke to the world-class doctors, he spoke to archaeologists, he spoke to believers and unbelievers alike in order to disprove that Yeshua is the Messiah. And in the end, he was broken. And he said, I can't get away from this. I cannot get round this. The evidence is overwhelming in support of the fact that Jesus of Nazareth, Yeshua, is and was the Messiah that everybody was waiting for, and some still are. I'll put the link up to this website, but this shows, if you want to look into it, some of the messianic prophecies, where they are in the Tanakh or the Torah, and their fulfillment and how he fulfilled them. These are just some examples. I don't know. He fulfilled thousands, or perhaps not thousands, but anyway, hundreds or many prophecies. Of those that were not fulfilled, they are yet to be fulfilled, because he came once as the suffering Messiah to suffer for our sins, and he's coming again as the glorious King, as the triumphant Lord, to fulfill those which are that aspect of his messiahship and of his kingship which has not yet been fulfilled. And this is imminent. This is what we are saying. This is imminent. So please, everybody, wake up. Look into this. Even if you want to try and disprove it for yourself, look into it. Do the study. So I have to say, are you asleep? Are you one of the group who are asleep? Are you complacent? Do you think, well, I'm saved, it's okay, I've done enough, I can carry on living for myself? Don't be deceived. You've got to get right with God. You may well be saved, but are you going to be part of the bride of Christ? Or are you lukewarm? Read what it says in Revelation, where God says, you are lukewarm, I will spew you out of my mouth. And what it says in Luke, that we should pray always, that we should be accounted worthy to escape the time of trial which is coming to test the whole world. Look again at the parable of the 10 virgins. 5 of them were asleep, and they desired to go in to the wedding, to the marriage, and they could not. Please check where you are. Are you sold out for Yeshua? or are you not? Have you got one foot in the world? And are you more concerned about your own plans? Or are you completely sold out for him? Are you ready? Because God's time is up. He's saying time is up. He's been telling me this for over a year. If time was up a year ago, how much more is it up now? How imminent are these events? How much more imminent are they even now? One of the visions or dreams that I had some time ago, I didn't understand it. Are you hoping for politicians? Are you one of the Make America Great Again people? Are you putting your hope and your trust in a new British Prime Minister after, or a new election after Theresa May steps down? Are you hoping to push through to stop Brexit from happening, or do you want Brexit to happen? Are you looking for a political answer? I had a dream some time ago, and I have shared about this in an earlier video, when I saw a tsunami coming from the right. I was standing on the shore, and to the left of me was, I believe it was New York, and this tsunami wave was 60, 100 feet high, I have no idea, and I was running along the coast chasing after an empty Coke can. And I allowed myself to be engulfed in this wave because I was not doing what I should be doing and getting ready and observing the signs of the time, even as this tsunami came. I do believe this is actually a real event that's going to happen. Other people have seen the same thing, that a tsunami is going to come and onto the east coast of America. Others have also seen it happening in the west coast of America, but it is also metaphorical. The time of the end is now. And are you putting your trust in Make America Great Again? What good is an empty Coke can in a tsunami? It's ridiculous. So don't be looking for that. It was pointless. It was showing that the time is up for that particular political movement, or in fact any political movement. You will not find the answer in man in 506. You need to find the answer in 507 and 508, a new beginning with Yeshua. Time is up. One of the events that is about to take place, and many have seen this and the scriptures talk of this, is the rapture. Now I know that different people have different views on this. I've studied this, and if you have a different view on the timing of the rapture, that's absolutely fine. Doesn't mean that you're not saved or that you don't love the Lord. But my personal view, and I've become convinced of this, I used to be mid-trib, I'm not now, I'm pre-trib, and I believe this is what the Lord is saying. But whatever, whether you are pre-trib, mid-trib, whatever, you need to be ready now. You need to be ready at any time, in any case, because none of us know when our time is up. And God is saying on the world stage that time is up. And if you don't know about the rapture, please look it up. Put the scriptures up here now. I won't read them. You can look it up for yourself, because this event is going to happen. The rapture will happen. People will be taken out of the way. The children will disappear. The tribulation will begin. The Antichrist will step up onto the world stage, and everybody will think he's the answer to all of their problems, and there will be the great deception, which my interpretation of that is that people will be told that, and I've written about this and spoken about this in a previous video, that all the people who have disappeared have been taken by aliens. And I would encourage you to look at my video called Antichrist and Mind Control, and it talks about the predictive programming that we've all been subject to while the powers that be behind the scene prepare us for these events that are coming, prepare us to be deceived and to accept the Antichrist who is imminent. So when the dream was finishing, I heard a song that went through my head while I was dreaming of it as the dream came to an end. And I remembered in my dream I had felt that I had to share or sing this song in the video that I had to make, that there was something prophetic about this. And I've only ever heard this song once, I mean this particular version of it. And it was a version of the Hebrew prayer Shema, the Shema, which is a very, very important prayer for Hebrew people. And Shema Yisrael means hear, O Israel. And I believe that the Lord wants Jewish people out there to hear this, not just the Jews, of course, but also the Messianics, the crossovers, the Christians, the lukewarm, everybody everywhere. Shema, Shema, hear, please hear what he is saying. Shema Yisrael. And I'm going to, I won't sing it to you, but I will play you the version. There we are. The rapture is at hand, and the Antichrist is just working away behind the scenes, ready to step forward. There we are. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. The Lord is one. So there is one, only one God. It is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and it is and his Messiah, his Mashiach, who is Yeshua. Please look into it. If you are Jewish, please see my last video, my previous video about, oh gosh, I can't remember what it's called now, but my previous one, the long one, it's an hour and 8 minutes, and it's about dreams that I had of visiting a synagogue, and how, oh, that's right, it's the way, the truth about the way to life in God. Please watch that. It's something that God told me to research and to do. Or even if you're not Jewish and you want to know the truth about the way to life in God, please watch that. So I will finish with this. I will play a little bit of this song. I'll also put a link. These two beautiful young ladies with beautiful voices singing this song, and I won't play all of it because I don't want to have any copyright breaches. But here they are. It's called Shema Yisrael. And I'll start playing it and then I'll fade it out and then I'll finish the video. But thank you for bearing with me, and I hope you will take to heart the thrust of this video, which is there's only one way to be saved, and that's through Yeshua HaMashiach. He is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father through him. We are on the cusp of the end here, and I don't want you to be left behind, and I don't want you to be deceived by the Antichrist who is at hand. So I will play this. I hope this will work, and God bless you. Thank you for watching.